Ladies and gentlemen, Nicole is back. She had dropped off the call, but we were bringing her back on stage. Nicole?
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Beautiful. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Doing amazing. I'm glad to hear, Nicole. I'm really glad to hear. So yeah, as you remember, I had previously asked you if you weren't in real estate, what would you have been? You had mentioned being a vet, but can you tell the people why exactly, and anything else that you would like to be if you weren't in real estate?
So when I was younger, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I went to college, started out pre-veterinary medicine, and then I got into real estate when I was 19. So that kind of changed the course of everything. But over the years, I have thought about it, and if I could do anything I wanted and money was no object, wasn't a problem, I think I would own a senior citizen home, like a assisted living for the elderly.
Wow, that's amazing. That's you have such a great heart. I don't know if you ever speak to old people. They always have stories to share, so I'm sure you could always learn some wisdom from them.
Of course.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. What's the most misunderstood thing about you, real estate, and your work? Would you say?
Well, going back to what I said earlier in the last podcast, so one of the things that people think is that they think that we constantly show houses all day long, and that's all we do. They see it on House Hunters, on HGTV, and other TV shows, and they think that's what we do. But that's probably maybe 5 to 10% of the time that's what we're doing. I do more listings than I work with buyers, so of course that's going to put me in the office more. But even when I was carrying a heavy buyer load, I still spend the majority of my time in the office working on processing files and such. So that's probably the biggest misunderstood thing about real estate.
No, I totally get it. You think there's any are there any misconceptions you think about people have about real estate in today's world?
Oh, certainly. So a lot of people see how much money the real estate agent gets on the HUD statement, and they think that's what I'm actually getting. And that would be great. That would be lovely. But that money is usually split between, like, I'm part of a franchise. I work at Coldwell Banker. So the franchise gets part of it. And then my office gets part of it. And then you have to pay errors and omissions insurance and so forth and so on. There's a lot of things that come out of that money. So what the agent actually gets is a fraction of what they're seeing being paid at that closing.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Nicole. That's actually a true gem right there. Yeah, you're totally right on that. That pie that you see, you don't get the whole thing. You only get a slice of it, and you're completely right on that. If you could change one thing about real estate, what would it be and why?
I wish that we could set hours, like specific hours, and truly stick to those hours. 50 years ago, real estate agents worked bankers' hours because you had to make a phone call to be able to show a listing, and you would call up your fellow agents and find out what they had available, and then you would work with your buyer and you drive around and look at houses during the daytime, and then you'd go home at night. There was no cell phones to be used. There was no email. Everything consisted within a normal set of hours. Nowadays, with the mentions of cell phones and the ease of email and everything, we're on 24/7. I have people that will text me. I'll get a text at 1 a.m. sometimes, or emails at all hours of the day and night. And most of the time, people are understanding that if they email me at 10:30 at night, I probably am not going to answer them until the next morning. But some people expect you to answer them that night. Like, if you're awake, you should be answering it. And I really wish that we could change the mentality of the world, so that fellow agents could have better work-life balances.
No, you're totally right, Nicole. Yeah, you really are truly always on the clock. You're on your client's time, not really yours. But hey, you're here to serve, and I'm glad you're always giving that 5-star user experience by being available to them. And what's the most courageous decision you've made recently, and how did it impact you?
Well, I kind of hung my hat on flipping houses about 8 years ago, and I haven't messed with that in a really long time. But I think it was in February, an opportunity presented itself to me for a house to flip. And out of the blue, somebody called me with something that was available that was in so bad a shape, there was just no way a loan could be given for this house. And I decided to jump on it. And I had to wait a few months to close on it, but I closed on it in May, and I am nearly done with the renovations and ready to put it on the market. And I think that I'm going to do pretty well with that.
No, amazing, Nicole, amazing. And then some lenders do require 6 months of seasoning or for the purchase after 90 days, you're completely fine. Would you say?
What'd you say now?
Some lenders, don't they require like 6 months of seasoning for the after repair?
Yes.
Or can you get away with just 90 days in your case?
Well, it depends. I believe on the FHA, I think it's 6 months. They have a flipping rule, so it depends on the loan that the buyer gets, as to how long they would have to wait.
Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. It truly means a lot. Some people, ladies and gentlemen, go conventional if you just got a new flip. And then, what's the next big thing we should expect in the industry, and how are you contributing to it besides what's happening on August 17th that you had mentioned earlier?
Oh, the next big thing in the industry? That is the next big thing. That's going to shake our industry for years to come.
Really? Why do you say?
Oh, yeah. I think that we're just at the very beginning of this whole thing. That's going to definitely, I think that is going to change how agents, I guess, advertise. Agents that have partnerships with like Zillow, Homes.com, and all the different websites that we partner with. I think it's going to change how we're able to even do that. But really, it's gonna change how we're able to work with buyers. I mean, at this point, somebody's gonna call you to see a house, and you're gonna need to set an agreement with them right up front, saying, "Hey, you're committing to me to be your real estate agent." And I think it's kind of hard to ask somebody to commit to you when they haven't even met you yet. They don't know your style. They don't know how well you're going to work for them. I think it's pretty crazy to say right now, you have to decide right now that I'm your agent just to be able to see the inside of a house. And it's going to be good. Like I was saying before, it's going to help buyers understand commission and understand what they would be responsible for up front. So that's a good thing. But I think it's really going to somehow shape buyers' minds and change the industry as a whole over the coming years.
No, when you put it that way, you're totally right. Can you get the buyer just to do do it on a contract basis? Hey, we're gonna sign this agreement only for this house, and the next one they can decide again, or is it once they sign, they're locked in with you forever?
I'll lock in with you forever. You put a time period on there, and then you could put a stipulation in there that applies to just this one property. But to be honest, if I'm gonna, show somebody a property and we're gonna have to go through all the rigmarole of doing some paperwork and getting it on file, at some point, either people are gonna have to start paying me per showing for all the paperwork and all the time that it's gonna take, because not only do I have to get a piece of paper signed with the buyer saying that I'm gonna represent them if they buy this house, I now also have to get a compensation agreement from the listing agent showing what they're willing to share of the commission. So I have to get 2 papers signed, multiple people involved, signatures signed before I can even go show a house. It's probably going to take me normally 15 minutes. Well, you got to think, if a buyer is going to sign a signature and commit to you for this house, when they go to look at it, they're going to feel like they're committed. Now they're going to probably want to spend more time in the house looking at it. I mean, it's just really making the whole process so much more dramatic than it has to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of more moving pieces. So you're completely right. The way you conduct business will be a shift or paradigm shift on the way you conduct business. I now see it. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. It means a lot. And if you could have dinner with one historical figure, who would it be and why?
I even had this one. I even thought about this one.
It can be 2 or 3 people, Nicole. No worries.
Well, I know this sounds crazy, but one person I thought about was Ringo Starr. I love the Beatles. And I just love rock music, and it would just be intriguing because I love the drums too. My son takes drum lessons and I just love it.
That's amazing, Nicole. Thank you for sharing that. That's a good one, I would say. That's a good. The Beatles are known worldwide. I swear, like everyone knows the Beatles, or everyone knows that show Friends. So it's like they're actually very iconic. And then you don't have to answer this one, but how do you handle criticism or negative feedback about your work if it's ever even occurred?
Well, of course. I mean, everybody gets criticism, whether it's warranted or not. But if I have an agent, I mean, even if I have a client who, it's very rare, but when I have a client who maybe I sold a house to and I see them list their house with somebody else, if I was really close with them, sometimes I'll ask them, is there something that I did that, you didn't appreciate or you didn't feel was right? Is there something that I could do to improve upon this? Or especially when I interview for a listing, in the off chance that I don't get the listing and somebody says, hey, we decided to go another way, I typically will ask them, is there something that I could have done differently or better, just so that I can kind of understand where they were coming from in the decision, and I can, always aim to improve myself.
No, like you said, you're continuously improving yourself. So I'm glad that you're super self-aware that you want to make sure you're always giving the consumer their 5-star user experience. And not everyone is cookie cutter the same. So the fact that you can cater to their case by case scenario is truly elite, I would say, on your end. And what's the story behind your most memorable success and your most memorable failure? Would you say?
Well, if I had to say I wouldn't call it a failure necessarily, but probably back in 2011, 2012, towards the tail end of our flipping, the investor that I was working with, like I said before, it didn't really matter anything about the house. If I went over and looked at it and I said, let's buy it for this price, he would sign on the dotted line and he would buy it. And I would tell him, this is what it'll sell for. This is what you need to do. He would always know what he needed to do to fix it, but I was basically providing the buying price and the selling price, and he figured out all in between. Well, there was one house that I thought was a really great buy, and he rehabbed it, did a great job. And for whatever reason, that house sat and sat and sat and sat. And I'll never forget that house. I can still think about it to this day, 103 Lake Crest Drive. I don't know why the house wouldn't sell, but it took forever. And he had to continuously reduce the price. And by the time he ended up selling it, he really didn't make that much money. He even offered it to his daughter at one point, just because he wanted to be done with it. And so I always beat myself up about that house because I could never figure out what it was that caused it to take so long to sell. Sometimes I say that, it just has to be the right person, and a house sits for a while because the right person just hasn't come along yet. But on that one, I still to this day think about that house and don't know why it hasn't sold.
Were you getting open houses though on it at least? Or
Yeah,
just
I did two of them, and but the market wasn't as good as it was, in the past few years. It wasn't that good back then, but back then, what you had was you had a lot of houses that were foreclosing, that were looking bad, they were in terrible shape, and then you had the flippers coming in buying them. So then on the flip side, no pun intended, you had the houses that were completely fixed up, everything move-in ready, new floors, new paint. And since a lot of our market in our local area is our veterans and they use the VA loan, they need something move-in ready. So they can't buy the homes that are foreclosed, even though they seem like a good deal, they can't get a loan on them. So since maybe 80% of our mortgages in the especially in the median price range and below are VA loans, everybody was gravitating towards those fixed up houses. So for a house like this to be available, and it was 4 bedrooms with a 2-car garage, for it to be available, it was just shocking that it didn't sell quickly.
Yeah, you're totally right. Sometimes your mind is mind boggling when something doesn't go, when something's supposed to go a certain way, but yet it doesn't. And does the VA, do they have seasoning requirements, or is that you never had any issues with that when they buy a new recently fixed flipped home?
You mean as far as when people buy a flipped home with VA?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the seasoning period because we haven't seen a lot of flips lately. This one I'm doing is one of the first ones I've seen in years. I mean, they're out there, but it's just not as common because most of the time the house, even when it's foreclosed and selling for a lower price, even a homeowner with a little bit of money down, they can buy it with a conventional loan. So it's harder for investors to find homes right now to flip. But I don't remember there being a specific seasoning period on that. But we do run into issues with the VA requirements in terms of property condition. So a lot of people hear things when they're in other areas where they don't do a lot of VA loans and they get scared of doing them. Like, for example, like in the Midwest where you don't have a lot of military bases, so you don't have, agents and lenders aren't as versed in them. They kind of get scared of VA loans and they get a bad rap because people think that the homes have to be in pristine condition and this and that. And that's not necessarily true. It's not as bad as what people think, but they do have some minimum requirements, which I think are fair. I mean, they don't want it to be, run down and have broken windows and stuff like that. I mean, I feel like that's pretty fair.
No, it's totally fair. Yeah, you gotta get the termite inspection. You gotta check the septic. At least at least those are the bones of at least getting through a VA loan. And thanks for sharing that, Nicole. And then, what's your most memorable success, would you say?
Well, probably one of the most memorable things is with Coldwell Banker Access Realty. I moved my license over there July 2nd of 2015. And for the first 5 years that I was there, I was the #1 agent within the company. We have 13 offices, maybe 300 to 400 agents at most times. And I was the #1 producer in volume and units for several years.
Whoa, Nicole, you're a living legend. You're putting up Hall of Fame numbers. Just jumping right into it. Thank you for sharing that about yourself. I really applaud you. What legacy do you hope to leave behind through your work, would you say?
I think I just want to be remembered by somebody who was very honest, very straightforward, and I truly care about my clients. It's not about the money for me anymore. I do well enough that I can survive, at this point without totally killing it. So at this point, it's all about, everything comes down to the principle, the issue for me a lot of times, and doing what's right. And so I stand behind that, and I give my clients the best advice I can. I never want them to do anything that they don't want to do. Every one of my clients hears that constantly. I tell them, they say, well, what do you think? And I say, well, this is what I think, but I think that you need to do what you feel comfortable with. And I always want my clients to do that because I don't want anybody to ever look back and have any regret. And I'll tell you this one story. And if the client if the client that this was regarding was hearing this, he would know who I'm talking about. But I had this house that I listed, it's probably been about 5 years ago. And the seller, we listed for the price that we agreed upon. Everything was great. We go on the market and we get an offer right away. And the offer was, I believe, a full price offer, but they were asking for the closing costs, and he didn't want to do it. And I said, well, I said, I'm going to let you know something. I said, I don't know that I'm going to get you a better offer than this, but I don't want you to do anything you don't feel comfortable with. So first offer didn't work out. So then we go along to the second offer, which is even less of an offer and closing. And because time had passed, he was getting desperate. He took the offer. And then something fell through with like the financing or something or another. And so we go back on the market and we go to a third offer, which the third offer was worse than the first two. So he goes under contract, and then that falls through.
No.
So, yep. So I finally said, and I knew he was a proud man, I said, should call back the first people, because, you know, the best out of three. Let's just see if they found anything. So I called back the first buyer's agent, and she said, well, I mean, they did go under contract on something, but they're still in their due diligence period, and they just love this house. They just love it. And I said, well, if you can bring me another offer, I think we could work that offer out again. Well, they brought us another offer. It wasn't the same as the first offer. It was about $5,000 less. But all the other terms were the same, and it still made it better than the two offers, you know, that came after it. So he took it and he was happy as a pig in mud. So we go to closing, and he says, Nicole, I should have listened to you. And I said, you know what? That is music to my ears. I have been waiting 4 long months to hear that from you. I said, but I will say this. I said, if you took the first offer, you would have always thought that I was hoodooing you and swindling you, and you would have thought that I was just in it for the money and that I took advantage of you, because that's what you were telling me when we first met, that you didn't trust real estate agents. I said, so personally, I'm glad that you lost the $5,000, because at this point you feel comfortable with this transaction. You feel like you did the best that you could, and you're happy with it. Am I right? And he said, you're right. I said, I hate that you lost the $5,000, but I'd rather see you sell it for less and walk out of this transaction feeling satisfied and feeling like I did my job, because the last thing I want is for you to go around talking about me like you did the last agent.
That's an amazing story, Nicole. That's literally like top notch. Like that story probably personifies how you handle almost every transaction. And I'm glad you are an advisor you're an advisor, and you're an advocate for your clients. You truly are an advocate for them. So I applaud you on that. And who or what inspires and influences you the most in your work?
Who inspires me the most?
Mm-hmm.
Probably my husband. He really he supports me in every way, and he works around my crazy hours and deals with me when I'm, you know, talking on the phone at 10:30 at night, or sending texts at 11:30, or we're on vacation and I have to pull over to send a contract or something. He understands, and he supports me in all that. So I really appreciate him.
No, I'm glad you have someone in your corner that really supports you and gives you that reinforcement for you to pursue all your dreams and manifest them and execute on them. And then, Nicole, as you know, I'm going to be rewatching this when I'm 80 years old. What life piece of advice do you want to share with me when I'm rewatching this?
Oh, only thing I can say is take time to smell the roses, slow down, and enjoy each day one at a time.
Thank you, Nicole. That means a lot. It truly does, from the bottom of my heart. And then, do you have any other comments, thoughts, or for the people that are listening to you right now?
Was my audience mostly real estate agents or buyers and sellers?
It'll probably be a mixture.
Just educate yourself, whether you're an agent who's going to be going through all the upcoming changes with NAR, or you're a buyer or seller in these changing markets. Just educate yourself on all of the changes, and just know that a good real estate agent should be very transparent with you, and you should feel that from them, and you should feel happy and comfortable with every decision you make throughout every transaction that you do.
No, those are true words not spoken enough about, Nicole. Thank you for leaving that on a high note. And how can people get in contact with you again?
Oh, well, they can call my cell phone, 912-552-0680, or email me, NICOLEREADDICK @gmail.com.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard from a queen of Georgia. If you listen correctly, again, Google her. Nicole Readdick, homes.com. She isn't lying. She's one of the best to ever do it, to play the game. So, Nicole, it was a true honor and pleasure having you on the show today.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay. Can you stay on one more minute?